guys, welcome back. It's Josh with Financial Advisor Car Guy. This week we're going to spend some time talking about distracted driving. If you remember last week, we talked about driver's education and the importance of our youth learning how to drive properly. And this week, my daughter and I actually saw something really humorous. It was just comical to us. And so we were talking about how appropriate certain things are when you're driving. And, again, she's going through the whole process of learning how to do all this. And so anyway, the long and short of it is my wife was working late one evening and my kids and I were driving to my wife's work with some dinner. And we get behind this car and we're following the car and they're kind of weaving, they're staying in their lane. Okay, that wasn't the problem. But they were going from the right side to the left side to the right side. And they were just, they just weren't paying attention, right? You could tell. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this person's texting or whatever they're doing. We pull up to a stop sign and I can see through their back window. They actually have their phone on their windshield, like mounted to the windshield with a suction cup thing. And they're watching TikTok videos. Now, we could see like them scrolling up, right? So they're watching the next video, watching it for a moment, scrolling up, clicking on the comments, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this lady is going to cause a wreck. So, she goes a different direction and we lose her. So no big deal. But this is what prompted the conversation. And it kind of made me realize that, when we're young, I think we sort of think we're invincible and we don't worry too much about distractions. Distractions can be things like passengers in your passenger seat or in the back seat. Once upon a time, like when I was younger, changing a cassette tape or a CD, that was a distraction. In fact, one time when I was in high school, I had a friend get pulled over and same thing. It was because he was kind of like weaving in his lane and I was the passenger and his binder of CDs was on the floor behind my passenger seat. So I couldn't exactly reach behind and grab it. So, he's driving with one hand and he's trying to like reach down and grab the binder of CDs so that I can select the next CD for us to listen to some music. And he got pulled over. And I don't recall if he got a ticket or not. I really don't. I kind of don't think he did, but I remember that being the reason. And same story, right? He wasn't totally distracted. He was keeping his eyes on the road, but because he was leaning and kind of contorting his body to reach down and around to grab that binder, he had to kind of like fight the car a little bit and whatever. So, one thing that thinking back to those times, I had one of the very, very early flip out LCD screens. It's a single DIN flip out screen radio in one of my cars years and years and years and years ago. And I remember when I bought that, I wired it up and it wouldn't play video while the car was moving. And, obviously even then I knew why. They don't want you to like pop in a DVD and watch a movie while you're driving down the road. Well, what I learned very quickly is that if you somehow ground a certain wire, it bypasses that. And so sure enough, like an idiot, I did it. I grounded that wire and all of a sudden I could have video playback while I'm driving 65 miles an hour down the road or whatever. And, I very clearly remember like exactly that, right? Having a movie playing on my dash. Idiot. Or episodes of Friends or whatever DVDs I had in the car, right? It wasn't always that. A lot of the time it was just music, but nonetheless, it was definitely a distraction. And that's not any different than this lady watching TikTok, I realize. But the difference between that is it was just playing. I could listen to it, I could glance down, but I could still drive and pay full attention to the road. Whereas this gal is like actively scrolling through TikTok and maybe even like commenting, if you will, leaving comments on these videos via voice. And that just wasn't a thing back when. So Distracted driving can cause serious problems. I know I see people all the time texting, all the time talking on the phone. I mean, these are things that are illegal in Oregon. I assume elsewhere too. But it is pretty common to see people with their phone up to their ear, even though it's illegal. I see people all the time like looking down at their crotch because I know they have their phone down there, right? I mean, they're like down there and whatever. More so at stop signs and stop lights and things like that. But driving, I see it all the time, and I've got to assume that eventually these people will get caught. Where I've been guilty of doing that is my kids play Pokemon Go. My daughter, not so much anymore. My son loves Pokemon Go. And we would drive around town and catch Pokemon and do the raids and take over gyms and do all the things that this game does. But generally speaking, I would either have my phone in my pocket or I'd have it propped on the dash so that if whatever the special Pokemon of the day or whatever, however that works, would pop up, I'd be able to click on it and then I'd hand the phone back to him and he'd catch it and whatever. And so that I realize probably crosses that line a little bit. That was just one of those things that when that game was new, especially, it was, I think, a pretty common thing. And, we did our best to have a workaround. And obviously I want to promote not having distractions while you're driving, right? It's very, very important to remain focused, have your attention be on the road. The last thing you need is for someone to be in a car wreck because, their eyes were down on the phone or on the dashboard, or the radio, at their passenger, eating a sandwich, whatever the distraction can be. I think it's important to just realize that you have to be a little bit more of a defensive driver in today's world because you just never know what the next guy is going to be doing or the next gal. I would never have thought I would have ever seen somebody actively scrolling TikTok while driving. But I guess that's really no different than somebody texting or, whatever. I guess, it's a younger generational thing. I think that their attention span is such that it's not the same. Driving your commute every morning, I get it. It can get boring, or on your way to school or on your way to whatever, it can get boring. And so, by having an active Instagram account up or your TikTok or Facebook or whatever you're doing with yourself on your phone, having that up and you can stay in tune, you feel like you're still connected and you're just on your commute and you're multitasking, right? You're multitasking, which is a great thing, but not so much. When you're behind the wheel, you've got to have 100% accuracy all the time. You've got to be obviously paying attention. You can get yourself into trouble, you can hurt yourself, and you can really hurt others. And so, distracted driving is a problem. And really that's all I wanted to talk to you guys about today is just the conversation that my daughter and I had. She was very astute in seeing where the problem was. Now in her devil's advocate, right? She was sitting there on TikTok too. And now she's my passenger. She's not driving, so she doesn't have to pay attention the same way the driver does, right? But, she didn't necessarily immediately, she thought it was funny, but she didn't really see what was wrong with the situation. And I know why. It's because she also is in the car traveling someplace and she's on TikTok. And so I had to definitely explain, like, listen, here's the problem. When your hand is up on your phone and you're like scrolling and you're hitting the comment button and you hit the record button and you're verbally, then you're stopping the recording and then you're going to proofread it and then you're going to hit send and, you're distracted. You're 100% distracted. You're not watching the road the way you should. And she totally saw that. She totally got that, which is encouraging because, again, as she's learning to drive, I want to make sure she's doing the best she can to not have these, external distractions. And it could be something like my son sitting next to her or behind her or whatever and just bugging her while she's driving. It's a huge distraction. So, this is a conversation I'm going to have to share with him too. Like, listen, bud, we can't distract her. She needs to give the road her full attention. We don't want her to get hurt. We don't want other people to get hurt. We want to maintain safety and all those things. And so, yeah, it's an important conversation. And it's interesting because to me, 100% second nature, right? You don't even think about the fact that something can be a distraction. You get behind the wheel and you give your undivided attention to what you're doing. But again, the youth of today, kids that are 16, 17, 18, they've never known a time without a cell phone or social media or, YouTube, those kind of things. And they want to incorporate that stuff into everyday life. And that's where it becomes garbage, because now all of a sudden you're filtering this junk in, and it's corrupting what you should be doing. And in this circumstance, in this example, what you should be doing is focusing on the road and driving, not distracted. And, there is a tendency and an urge and a desire to always be in the know and have Instagram open all the time so that at that moment what's happening in the world with your friends and all these things. And, honestly, I think the greatest thing, one of the best updates that like iPhones and Androids and all these phones have done is there's a setting where if it senses you moving, it disables a lot of features of the phone. It won't allow an incoming phone call or text. I'm not sure about the audio, video, all that stuff anymore, but I'm assuming it's a setting. So if you disable, if you're in like active moving mode or car mode or whatever it is, in theory, it's not going to be a distraction, especially if you are a woman and you leave it in your purse, or if you're a guy and you leave it in your pocket. The moment you run into problems is if it's sitting there in your cup holder or in that cradle on your dashboard, or, suction cup to your windshield. GPS, that's a whole nother animal, especially when cars have it built in. Bluetooth audio, it's again, same thing. It can be distracting, but the reason that they've integrated it into the vehicle is so you can keep your wireless device away. You can keep your phone in your pocket and it can wirelessly stream Spotify or Pandora or whatever you're doing. Or your car might have satellite radio and you just tune it to the station you want, or the regular radio for that matter, just the station that you want, and it's gonna just play. CDs aren't so much of a thing anymore. Cassette tapes certainly are not. So those are distractions that have sort of worked their way out of the system. But now we're dealing with cell phones and those kind of things, and that's a much larger distraction. It's a bigger problem. I'm not a police officer, but I absolutely know that that's probably one of the largest problems that a traffic cop would find. It's pulling over people who are texting or talking on the phone or whatever it is. And, I don't know what the penalty is for that, or the fine or any of those things, but it's probably pretty steep. And so that's it. That's all I got for you guys this week. What are your thoughts? Comment down below. Let me know if you think distracting driving is a big problem. It's probably bigger in certain areas. In a more rural environment, maybe it's not as problematic, but when you're in a metropolitan area where there's stop and go traffic, I could see just a quick glance down at a phone, whether it's to answer a phone call or reply to a text or catch that Pokemon, right? You could absolutely rear end somebody or be rear-ended very, very quickly. And so it's an issue. And so anyway, guys, share with me down below what your thoughts are on the whole thing. Don't forget to like, subscribe, make sure you hit that notification bell. Most importantly, remember, may every investment you make be a good one. Till next time.